5 days after the doctor told me I had aggressive lymphoma, my wife slid divorce papers across the kitchen table while I was still wearing the hospital wristband. Then I checked our bank account. I remember stupid details from that night, more clearly than I remember the diagnosis itself. The burnt smell of coffee sitting too long on the warmer, the ticking kitchen clock above the stove, the way Linda tapped her fingernails against the granite counter like she was waiting for a late appointment instead of ending a 24-year marriage. Outside, March cold pressed against the windows of our Fort Wayne house, fogging the glass around the edges. I'd just come home from 6 straight hours at the hospital, listening to an oncologist explain chemo schedules, survival rates, insurance nightmares, and words no husband or father ever wants attached to his name. I walked through my front door, hoping somebody would tell me we'd get through it together. Instead, I found divorce papers sitting beside a yellow legal pad. "You already hired a lawyer?" I asked quietly. Linda folded her hands together, like she'd rehearsed the conversation. "One round of chemo could ruin us financially, David." That was her first sentence. Not "how are you feeling?" Not "we'll figure this out." Just numbers. I sat down slowly, because suddenly my legs didn't feel stable anymore. "I have insurance," I muttered. "So you have expensive insurance," she corrected. "That's different." Technically, she wasn't wrong. I owned a small HVAC business. Self-employed men don't get perfect health plans. Mine cost almost $1,800 a month, and still somehow covered nothing useful when life actually fell apart. But hearing my wife discuss my cancer like a bad investment made something cold settle in my chest. "I'm going to fight this," I said. Linda looked tired more than cruel. That somehow hurt worse. Then she said the sentence that still wakes me up some nights. "I'm not spending the rest of my life watching somebody die slowly." Upstairs, a floorboard creaked. Emma, our daughter, thought we didn't notice when she listened from the staircase, but parents always know. "Mom?" Her voice cracked softly from the hallway. Linda didn't even lower her tone. "I'm 48 years old," she snapped. "I'm not becoming a widow before I have to." For a second, I honestly wondered if I was hallucinating. Nothing about the moment felt real. Then I opened our bank account. $3,000. 3 days earlier, there had been nearly $90,000 sitting there. My stomach dropped. "What did you do?" Linda exhaled impatiently like I was slowing things down. "I moved my share before treatment drains everything." Your share. After 24 years together, apparently that's what we'd become. I kept scrolling through the transfers until I saw the memo attached to the last withdrawal. This should cover a few treatments. That line hurt worse than the divorce papers. Behind me, Emma stepped halfway down the staircase wearing sweatpants and one of my old Notre Dame hoodies. She looked pale. "Dad's sick," she whispered. Linda stood up abruptly. "And I'm supposed to destroy my future because of it?" The room went completely silent. Emma stared at her mother like she'd never seen her before. Honestly, neither had I. And deep down, I think that was the exact moment our family stopped being a family. If you've ever watched somebody reveal who they really are when life gets hard, subscribe. Because some stories don't feel real until you survive them yourself. 3 days later, Linda moved into a luxury condo downtown with a man named Trevor Hale. I met him exactly once during those first weeks. I was dragging trash cans toward the curb when a white Porsche rolled into my driveway like it belonged there. Trevor stepped out wearing loafers with no socks in 30-degree weather and smiled at me like we were old friends. "Sorry things got messy, man," he said casually. "You got to protect your energy in this life. Protect your energy." Meanwhile, I had cancer spreading through my body. I remember gripping that trash can handle so hard my knuckles hurt, but I was too exhausted to fight anybody anymore. Chemo started 2 weeks later. Nothing prepares you for how small cancer makes your world feel. Hospitals become your routine. Pill bottles cover your counters. You stop measuring time normally and start measuring it between scan appointments. The infusion room at Parkview became strangely familiar after a while. Warm blankets, muted televisions, the quiet sound of IV machines humming for hours. What broke me most wasn't the treatment itself. It was watching other patients sit beside husbands and wives, holding their hands, while I pretended to read old hunting magazines alone. Emma waited through every appointment in the parking garage because visitors weren't allowed inside long during treatments. Every single time I came out, She'd already be standing there with coffee in one hand and some kind of snack in the other. One afternoon, she handed me a cup of hot water instead of coffee. "Google says too much caffeine is bad during chemo," she said nervously. I almost cried right there in the hospital lobby. The months blurred together after that. Vomiting at 2 in the morning. Insurance fights. Running my HVAC business while feeling like my body had batteries dying inside it. Some days I forgot laundry in the washer until it smelled sour. Other days I burned grilled cheese sandwiches because chemo brain made me wander away from the stove halfway through cooking. But no matter how sick I got, I tried to keep life normal for Emma. Homework at the kitchen table, movie nights on Fridays, frozen pizzas when neither of us had energy left to cook. The hardest moment came that August. I sold my fishing boat. It wasn't expensive, just an old Ranger bass boat I'd owned since Emma was little. But I needed money for her school tuition after Linda suddenly decided private school wasn't practical anymore. After the buyer drove away towing it behind his truck, I sat alone in the garage staring at the empty space where it used to sit. That was the first time I truly understood my old life was gone. Not damaged, gone. That night I fell asleep on the couch sometime after midnight, with the television still playing softly in the background. I woke up barely enough to feel somebody placing a blanket over me. "Emma, I'm sorry," I mumbled. She looked confused. "For what?" "For all of this." She stood there quietly for a second before answering. "I'm not going anywhere, Dad." And for the first time in months, I actually believed somebody meant it. If you've ever had one person stay beside you while everything else fell apart, subscribe. Because loyalty means more when life finally gives people a reason to leave. The next 3 years weren't inspiring movie scenes. They were survival. Recovery after cancer isn't some magical finish line where everything suddenly goes back to normal. The tumors disappeared. The exhaustion didn't. My hands still shook sometimes from nerve damage. I got winded climbing stairs. Every follow-up scan turned me into a nervous wreck for days beforehand. Financially, I stayed 1 bad month away from disaster. But Indiana summers don't care if you're recovering from lymphoma. When air conditioners die in July, people still call. So I kept working. There were afternoons I crawled through attic insulation, feeling so weak I thought I might collapse. One customer found me sitting on his driveway after installing a condenser unit. "Are you all right there, buddy?" he asked, handing me a Gatorade. "Yeah," I lied, "just getting old." I was 49. Emma carried more than she realized during those years. Every scan day she brought powdered donuts from the same bakery near DuPont Road because she believed doctors couldn't deliver bad news while people were eating pastries. That became our superstition. One winter morning after a clean scan, she lifted her coffee cup toward me in the parking garage. "Congratulations," she said. "You're still annoyingly alive." I laughed so hard coffee almost came out my nose. Moments like that kept me going. Meanwhile, Linda mostly existed through expensive gifts and empty text messages. Designer handbags, gift cards, random checks with no phone calls attached. Like money could replace presents. Then Purdue happened. The acceptance letter arrived on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Emma opened it standing in the kitchen while frozen pizzas baked in the oven. The second she started crying, I knew. And standing there watching my daughter realize her future was finally opening up in front of her. I suddenly realized something else too. The people who abandon you during your worst moments always seem to come back once your life starts looking hopeful again. Emma's graduation day felt perfect for exactly 20 minutes. Then Linda and Trevor arrived. You could smell Trevor's cologne before you saw him. He walked through the arena filming everything on his phone, while Linda followed beside him in a white designer suit and oversized sunglasses, like she was attending a celebrity event instead of her daughter's graduation. And then came the surprise. Outside in the parking lot sat a brand new red Corvette with a giant white bow stretched across the hood. People stopped walking just to stare at it. Trevor spun the keys around his finger proudly. "Only the best for our girl," he announced loudly. For a second, I looked over at my old Ford Escape sitting 3 rows away with faded paint and rust near the bumper. Honestly, part of me wanted Emma to take the car. Life had already been hard enough for her. But then Linda leaned toward our daughter and quietly said something she thought I wouldn't hear. "You don't want your future looking like your father's." That changed everything. Emma went completely still. She took the Corvette keys slowly, then turned toward the crowd gathering nearby. "Thank you for the gift," she said calmly, "but I can't accept it." The entire parking lot went silent. Then she pointed toward my old SUV. "My dad drove that car through cancer treatments, school pickups, hospital visits, and years of struggle," she said, voice shaking slightly. "He sold his fishing boat so I could stay in school. He never missed one important moment in my life." Linda's face lost all color. Emma held up the Corvette keys one last time. "This car is beautiful," she said quietly, "but it can't buy back 4 years." Then somehow Trevor dropped the keys straight into a storm drain. The sound echoed across the parking lot. People burst out laughing while he dropped to his knees, trying to reach them through the grate. And for the first time in years, I finally stopped feeling ashamed of surviving. If somebody stayed beside you during the hardest years of your life, tell them what they meant to you. Because loyalty is rarer than love.